Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose. I hope you're staying healthy, staying safe, and staying sane during our shelter in place as we're all home. To help support you through this journey that we are all on, I wanted to remind you that in my Journey Forward Facebook group, which you can go to the show notes to access the link, I am doing meditations 6 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday mornings at 8:45 a.m., Wednesdays and Sundays at 12:30. The Wednesday and Sundays are going to be longer, about 20 to 30 minutes, whereas the weekday mornings are about 5-minute meditations. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday evenings, and Friday evenings at 6 p.m. I'm going to be doing mindfulness tools in relation to how we can all cope and survive, and not just survive, but really grow during this time. And on Saturdays at 11 a.m., I will be doing a live Q&A. So please, anything I can be in support with you around, any tools coming from a mindset of mindfulness, meditation, mindset itself, therapy, all of this is where I can come in to really be a resource and support to you. So I hope that you find these extra resources valuable to you. And if anybody you know would appreciate joining in as well and joining our community, please invite them into the group. Again, those links are in the show notes. All right, be well and enjoy today's episode. Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am really looking forward to the conversation today with Robert Strock. Robert, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. And I know there's going to be so much wisdom shared today, as you and I have had a couple conversations prior. So I know I'm really looking forward to what you are going to be able to share with us. So please introduce yourself and let our listeners know who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Largely I've been a psychotherapist for close to 50 years. Been running a philanthropic foundation for about 25 years. And I'm also a human being who's experiencing what everybody else is experiencing. And so it's a big mix between the inner world and the outer world and being a human being. So yeah. It's all those and more.
Yeah, so some of those qualifications that those of us in the mental and emotional wellness field have, the human being part of us, I think, is coming up first and foremost. I know for myself, it's, we've all got these tools and we teach them and we utilize them, and more than ever, we're all in the same boat.
That's for sure. And I think one of the things that I'm noticing is it's a time where, for people who have the luxury of not having to be in panic about their economics or symptoms, there's a real chance that they can learn a little bit more how they can care for themselves and their loved ones and their family. And it's a time where there can be a silver lining if we're fortunate enough to not be overwhelmingly inundated with immediate threat.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. And it's interesting because I know I've talked to so many people this week in which, even if they don't live in that space of fear of economics or health, it can easily still spike in. Yes. Whether it's from, I've been saying people need to social distance themselves from the news a little bit, because sometimes too much information is not helpful. I know I was talking to one client who was like checking the stats in different states and counties. It's like, wait a second, how is that serving you? Because I think that's continuing to activate the fear and the worry.
Yeah.
So, some people feel better if they know more information, but that also keeps them in that space of fear and worry. But I've also interacted with a bunch of people who are having the ability to see this as an opportunity, like you said.
Yeah.
And I think that fear might still pop up because we're human, right? We're still all human. We just already named this.
Yes, for sure. And it may not even be pop-up. It may be just ongoing, low grade. It's there if you look close enough. And the real benefit potentially of this time is it's okay to be human.
Yes.
And it's okay to acknowledge what you experience. As a matter of fact, it's better than okay. It's really helpful to say, I'm scared. And especially if you have someone there or inside yourself, if you have a place inside you that can care for the experience you're having.
Yeah.
And that really is a key facet of acknowledging the human and looking for ways to care for it. And for some people, sometimes if they're really down under, the best they can do is have their mind at least be supportive, even if their heart can't gush with love.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I can be afraid and I can still have 6 foot distances. I can still call my friends. I can still give my partner a hug if we're both in that zone together.
Right.
I can ask myself things like, what's the next good thing I can do or think in the next 30 seconds or a minute? It's like, oh, I want to prune those leaves over there, or I want to make my flowers look nice, or I want to talk about how I'm feeling, or I want to take a nap. But somehow getting in the frame of what would be good for me, because we're all so different.
Yeah.
And asking that healing question, to not let the fear stimulate the questions that are unanswerable, like, how long is this going to last? And
I even think one of the worst questions people get stuck in asking that continues to activate that cycle, because I will draw this cycle out for people, and I usually start it with a thought, but I think thoughts, emotions, and sensations can be interchangeable within a second. So for me, it might be a thought. For anyone else, it could be an emotion or a sensation in their body. But you have this thought. It's going to lead to some sensation in your body, like a pit in your stomach or a tightness in your chest, which is going to lead to an emotion that we might label as fear or anxiety, which is going to lead to some reaction. And that reaction is either we want to push it away, ignore it, resist it. But I also find in that reaction is a judgment of, why did I have this thought? Why am I feeling this? Why am I experiencing this in my body? And as soon as we ask the why, is this happening? All of a sudden, we're spiraling in that, and it gets deeper, and then the thought gets stronger, the sensation gets bigger, the emotion feels unbearable, and then we're like, oh my God, I can't do this, and now it's even more.
Right. Yeah.
And that why, it's, you know what, there isn't always an answer to the why.
Yeah.
And because the opposite of why is to just accept. Why is the sky blue? I don't know, but I accept it. Why is the grass green? I don't know why. If I get spun on chicken and egg, I'm going to spin forever, right? I mean, we could just about simple things or about philosophical things or challenging things, but the why, there isn't an answer always. So to come to the acceptance and then, from the acceptance is compassion. And then to me, that's the whole mindful response to get us out of that negative reactive spiral.
Yeah. I think at this time, 90% plus questions need not be why questions, because the hidden place behind why is trying to solve something that's not possible.
Yeah.
And the art of asking ourselves a question that's leading us toward what will help us, what will be good for us, what way can I take care of myself, what way can I take care of the one that I love, my child or my lover or my father or my mother. Because we can learn so much being in so much vulnerability that we have the ability to ask ourselves questions that will lead us in a direction that's pragmatic, not abstract, just simple questions. Just simple questions like, what can I do in the next 30 seconds that will allow me to feel the best? I mean, everybody can have their best pet questions.
Right.
But the questions need to serve their well-being or serve something practical in some way.
Yeah.
And that's good practice for ordinary life.
Yeah, I agree. You said 2 things there that really struck me. One is the vulnerability it takes to do this.
Yes.
And I think that is getting so many people out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
And I felt that this morning. I did a Facebook video, a live video, and I'll be honest, I was still in my pajamas. I had no makeup on, hadn't really done my hair much, but I felt the need to share what I was feeling. And what I was feeling was also pretty vulnerable. And I named, like, look, this is me be authentically showing up. Like, I have no hair, no makeup on. I'm not here to like perform for anybody. This is me. Because I also felt like if I can vulnerably show up as a, however you want to say it, because it's a very humbled place to say it, a guide or a teacher or, you know, anyone someone might turn to for some tools. But if I can show up in that teacher mode alongside with them, naming what they're feeling, then they're also going to say, oh, okay, well, if she feels that, then I can have permission to show up vulnerably too.
You know, what you're saying is so touching to me, because the way I experience it is teachers, guides, supporters, therapists all need to share their vulnerability, or they're not practicing what they're preaching. And to be in recognition that we are a process.
Yeah.
We're not a solution. You know, we're human, and if we're caring for ourselves, we're a human that wants to care for ourselves. We're a human that wants to care for ourselves. And in one way, the way I frame it with clients is you deserve more credit for, and I mean credit not in an egoic way, but more in a way of self-soothing or something like that, when you can acknowledge your vulnerability than being together. I mean, it's harder to be openly vulnerable than it is to be loving and guiding and being mindful and being compassionate. I value vulnerability as much as I do wisdom. There's no favoritism.
Well, and you know what? One thing I'll always say to my clients or the people I'm working with is, hey, I'm still practicing, right? I may be practicing these tools a little bit longer, but we never arrive there. We're never like, okay, done, check, wisdom, I got it now. Like, you know, because if we are, then we're being naive to the process, that we are in process.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes my tools are easier to access than others.
Yeah.
And when I'm not able to access them, then I recognize, wow, this is really hard right now. Damn being human.
Exactly. And I add to it that I am quite sure I'm going to be vulnerable till I die.
Yeah.
So this is not something to get over. This is something to embrace as much as we can and have no illusion that anybody arrives.
Right.
What question is, can we be ourselves? How much can we be ourselves? How much are we too ashamed or too frightened or vulnerable, intolerant? How much are we that? And how much are we that? And at the same time, not be buried in it and be able to ask for help.
Yeah.
Internally and externally.
Well, the other thing that I think that vulnerability will do for people right now is it breeds connection. And we need to find connection in as many places as we can when we feel this social isolation, to remember we are emotionally and spiritually and through community still connected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's times like this where, whether it's fires or hurricanes or 9/11 or school shootings, there's almost always a period of time where there's a honeymoon stage where there's a group of people, wow, we're even closer than we've ever been, and I feel so grateful. And I think it's really important to try to remember, oh, it was okay to be vulnerable when I thought I might die.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I know I'm going to live forever, which I had a client tell me last week, until I met you, I thought I was going to live forever. You know, with good humor. I mean, not rationally, but when you really realize that being yourself, as intuitively obvious as it sounds, isn't what we're taught. We weren't guided there. Our parents didn't go when we were 4. By the way, this is what I'm experiencing. How are you now?
Right.
And how do we care for each other? And in some ways, it can be that simple as a general framework. None of us are going to be close to perfect, but recognizing that being ourselves is as good as it can be. To try to have a judgment over here saying I shouldn't feel this way is hilarious. I mean, as if that's ever worked.
Right.
How often has that judgment worked? And then again, the question of how can I be supported given this is where I where I am. Who do I know that can help? What can I say to myself that will help? How can I breathe?
Yeah.
What tone of voice do I want to use with myself?
That's huge. You know what I think would be so helpful is if when babies were born and the mother and father so lovingly looked down at this perfect little being, if they were to say very honestly, life is going to suck a lot of the time. And just so you know, that's normal and you're going to get through it. Because I think part of what I'm noticing is this like bubble has been burst for people of this perception that either they had control over life, not just maybe their life, but life period, or B, this perception of safety and security and this illusion that we all know is impermanent.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I let very laughingly and, jokingly say, if we could just give the baby the heads up that these ups and downs doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It doesn't mean life is over as you know it. It just means changes are going to happen. You're going to experience a whole lot of emotions. Some are going to be more unpleasant than others, and not judge yourself when that happens. And I'm always here for you. And now let's have a good life.
I'm ready to regress to be 2 years old. That should be my mommy.
Yeah.
I really am, because that's exactly it. And not only is life going to be that way, here's how it is for me. I don't need you to take care of me, but here are some of the ways I've really had hard times, and here's some of the ways I've tried to care for myself. You'll find your ways.
Yeah.
Maybe we all need to just share ways of how we can support ourselves while we're wiped out or frightened or sad or devastated or lonely or whatever it is. And it's courageous, it's heroic, to openly vulnerable. It's heroic.
Yeah.
And exact reverse. And when you were talking about ways of having a false sense of having it all together, to me, the appearance of having to be together is so causative, not only for personal suffering, but it's also the causative of, well, let's see, I'm China and I want to appear to be a together country, so I'm not going to let everybody know about the disease right away. I'm America, and we want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve and we're a great country, so I'm not going to. So we have a lot of us that have been taught we have to be together. So that means we have to bury where we are.
Yep.
Well, guess what? We're going to end up choosing leaders that are going to represent not being authentic, not being vulnerable and caring. We're together. Now I got it together. I'm a guide. I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
Look at me.
So in the beginning, you mentioned some of the silver linings. What would you think people could hold on to as a conceptual silver lining, and in that next 30 seconds, step towards that? Because if we continue to step towards that, then we're building it, right? Because I think it's easy to say, when this is done, there will be a silver lining. But what I heard and what you were saying is, I can build the silver lining now, so that way when it is over, it's already established. So what are some things that you have, thought about or suggest to people, or really would love to see being built now?
Yeah. I have a list that's a free list that lists 75 challenging emotions.
75. That's a lot of challenging emotions.
Yeah. And 75 healing qualities.
Okay.
And so wherever you are, you look at the list and say, which one of these am I in now? You become a little bit more emotionally literate. And then you ask yourself, well, which of these 75 would help me now? And so you recognize that there's every bit as much, there's even more courage, more humility to allow yourself to be in the 75 challenging emotions. And then have the hopefully Pavlovian response to then want to look for the 75 qualities and guide yourself on how to do that.
You said this is a free list we could have access to, so maybe we'd love to get those up in the show notes so people would be able to access those. Because I'm even just thinking statistically that I think I've heard that the numbers that, as far as naming emotions, men can name around 8 and women around 17. So I'm thinking 75, holy cow, that's like a lot of emotions. I can't even come up with 75 difficult emotions. What are some of the ones on that list that might not be as obvious?
Let's see. Ridiculing,
Mm-hmm.
um, emptiness,
Mm,
sorrow.
yeah.
People are more aware of grief and anger and hurt, but sorrow is different. Emptiness is different.
Yeah. Such
Those are different.
subtleties, but they are very different.
They're very different, and they have different healing qualities that are needed. For
Mm-hmm.
example, a lot of the healing qualities, what's needed is just a hand on the heart. Speaking of pragmatic things,
Mm-hmm.
a hand on the heart where you're wishing for yourself whatever quality it is that you need. So you're grounding it in your hand, or maybe your hands on your heart, or maybe you're asking your partner to put their hand on your heart, and you can share that during this time and beyond.
Yeah.
Tone of voice is another thing that is something very tangible. If we look closely, we realize, oh, I'm impatient, I'm intolerant, I'm superior, I'm righteous, and you start to see that, oh, maybe I could look at the list over here and I could be kind or considerate or empathic,
Softer,
tender,
yeah,
gentle. And so you start to become more versatile in seeing those possibilities of being able to identify your feelings and identify your needs.
Well, and I like what you said there. It's the possibility, which is to me the reminder. It's always an option to access it. It's always possible. That response is always available. It takes really not a whole lot of extra effort than the reactive response, because you're still putting energy.
Yeah. Now, I had a kidney transplant 20 years ago, and I felt lousy, slept an hour a night for 6 months. And I had a severe sleeping problem, an unusual reaction. And so I realized I was so wiped out that I knew I was emotionally worse off than my clients for 6 years.
Wow.
But I had a good mind that could guide me, but I couldn't, for example, say, oh, just be tender to yourself because you feel exhausted and speedy at the same time. But I could say, be as tender as to yourself as possible, knowing those words. This is a very subtle thing. Sometimes words that are guiding words are the best we can do, and we can't access the tenderness. We can't access the kindness. And so friendly mind is another concept that very applied, where you can use, everybody can think a friendly thought.
Right.
But when you're in an emotion deep enough, you can't necessarily come out of it and feel friendly. And so for me, my comment to myself was, you're at your most courageous when you feel the worst and you can access the friendly mind, or a mind that can be supportive. Now you have to listen to it, because it doesn't just praise you.
Right.
It's also going to say, and take rest when you need to, and don't avoid the doctor.
Right. There's very real stuff, tangible stuff to do there.
Yeah, so the friendly mind is a guiding wisdom mind, but it doesn't necessarily have all these glorious, compassionate feelings.
Right.
Because if you're wiped out enough, they're not available.
You know, it's interesting as you say that. What it makes me think about is years ago going through my divorce, and I had to draw upon all my tools, because every difficult emotion I had felt was present and alive and there. And sometimes just saying the words breathing in, breathing out to help me to quiet my mind and get present didn't really work when I was up at night and my mind was spinning. So I had heard this as a Thich Nhat Hanh approach. And his phrase was, breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And it was so subtle in that change of phrase. Instead of me having to do it per se, I was aware that it was already happening.
Absolutely.
And that seemed to quiet my mind and my body and get me unstuck from that spinning. So it was that meta awareness because the awareness directly I couldn't access yet
Mm-hmm.
in that moment.
Absolutely. And he also is so beautiful in the way that he always includes fear, anger, and sadness as being something that's virtually the perpetual condition of humanity, and embracing that as perfectly natural, perfectly natural. And you know, what you're saying about being aware of breathing is also a very, very subtle thing.
Mm-hmm.
While
Yeah.
I'm breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. You know, yes. And when you get a sense of being able to be that awareness, you're visiting a little bit of a respite from the emotion.
Yeah.
A little bit of a respite, but
And
not a permanent one.
right. Well, yeah, none of it's permanent. If it were permanent, you and I'd be out of a job because we would have solved it all like that. But I think these are the real things people need to hear right now.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
it's that reminder, I could have a good morning and then my afternoon can get shitty. And that doesn't mean the whole evening has to be shitty. I can just allow that moment.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easy to feel like, oh, I was doing so well, what happened? No, we didn't do anything wrong. It just meant the emotion or mood shifted.
Yeah. And one of the best guidance I received from a teacher was that emotions are a terrible barometer to describe how you're doing.
Say more to that.
How you respond to how you feel is more important than what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a tendency to go, I'm not feeling very good. Well, my next response is almost always, so how are you responding to not feeling well?
Mm-hmm.
And
I love that. It's so powerful.
And so it's a perpetual reminder that feeling itself isn't the barometer. That we believe success, feeling, and being sexy are kind of the big three. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but three of the big ones.
Yeah.
That are, yeah, they're somewhat important, but give me the ability to care and respond with caring to whatever I'm experiencing or whatever someone's experiencing around me all day long. So the best example I have of this, which has really, really changed my life. A friend of mine looked like death, was on his way to get a second kidney transplant. And I asked, and he literally looked worse than I felt those 6 years.
Wow.
And I asked him, how are you really doing? And he said, given everything, given all the conditions I'm facing, I think I'm doing really well. And he was in hell. And his mind was a laser supporter.
Wow.
He was responding to the hell with internal support. And if your goal stays with, well, if he doesn't feel better, then he didn't succeed, it's going to be a long life. And if you don't have to feel anything different than you feel, and you get the knack of responding, and some of the responding are those 75
Sure.
qualities. You know, I had a very hard time labeling whether is it qualities, is it essential needs, is it elements of compassion, qualities of the heart, and it's all the above.
Of course, yeah. Hard to put just one word to it.
It's impossible. I was upset with language.
Yeah. For those who listened, to the podcast for a while, have probably heard me share this, but it was such a powerful moment for me years ago. I was flying home from New York. I live in the Bay Area, so I was flying home after a retreat with Dan Millman at the Omega Institute in upstate New York, and it was a life-changing retreat for multiple reasons. And when I was flying home, and I didn't like to fly at that time, I was still I was getting out of my pattern of anxiety, of fear, but it was still on the cusp of what my old self would name as, I did not like it. I had too much anxiety and fear. So I was just coming out of that. And I was flying out of JFK, and there was a hard landing of a plane in LaGuardia, which meant all of the planes from LaGuardia were being diverted to JFK. And it was in the midst of a rainstorm. So long story short, I got on my plane. It was a JetBlue flight, which is important to the story because there was live TVs at everyone's seat. And everyone was watching the live news of the, quote, crash at the airport a few miles away. The old me would have been in, like, I would have gotten off the plane and driven home for the next 5 days. Like that would have been so anxiety provoking. They kept closing and opening the airport based on the weather. So long story was, I was sitting on that plane on the tarmac for 5.5 hours before we took off. And about 5 hours into my 5.5 hour delay sitting on that plane, I realized, I should call my mom because she's going to be worried, as she does. And I should let her know I haven't even taken off yet. And her picking up the phone caused her concern because I should have been in the air. Why was I calling to begin with? And she said to me, "Oh my God, Jory, you must be so frustrated." And something in that moment clicked that for the first time, I think I was 35 or 36 at the time, 35, I realized the difference between what someone else would feel in a situation and what I was feeling. And it was such a subtle difference. And I had the awareness to say, actually, Mom, it is a frustrating situation and I'm doing fine. Mm-hmm. And I've never forgotten that subtlety of, it's horrific. Like right now, right? This is horrific. This is a pandemic, economically, socially, physically, all of these restaurants and small businesses that are being, even big business, like this is insane. And right now I'm okay. Mm-hmm. Both can be true. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And having that subtle awareness on that phone call, sitting on that plane, I might not have been able to have that level of awareness had I not just come from a retreat. But to me, I wasn't ready to go home yet. So to me, I was able to reframe it as a gift of time because I was able to sit in journals for a little bit longer. I was able to be in my experience. And so I offer to the listeners right now, because in what way is this shelter in place a gift of time for maybe something you never realized you needed? And how we choose to utilize this time might be the ways of stepping towards that silver lining you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And being able, again, to ask yourself, can I imagine any way to use this time to really be more intimate with someone, be more intimate with myself, have fun, organize my day, be healthy, be smart. The possibilities of learning something meaningful on a depth level are so much higher at a time of crisis.
Yeah.
It's the worst and the best of times.
Yeah.
If we can really stay with it. And for those people who are only able to just stay with the worst of it, my heart goes out to them. My mind goes out to them. I would want to support them to try to trust their mind more than their feelings.
Yeah.
Trust their intelligence more than their feelings. They don't have to feel good. They don't have to be able to say, I'm okay. They don't, if they can, phenomenal. That's amazing. But most people are going to be, best case, able to have an awareness and a mind that can guide them in the right direction, and they can gradually learn to trust their own common sense more than their feelings.
Yeah.
And our culture is so feeling centered. And ironically, as therapists and guides, to be saying that message when so much of psychotherapy is thought about as the most important thing is feelings. And of course, I am saying feelings are very important to be aware of, but not as the end place.
Well, and just because we have them doesn't mean we need to act on them.
Exactly.
Let them just be there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's the conscious choice of, okay, so I'm feeling this. What do I want to do about it? Because I don't have a choice in what I feel, but I do have a choice in what I do with it.
Exactly. And how you respond, and whether your thoughts are spinning off of the difficult feelings, or your thoughts are spinning off of a longing or a questioning of how you can best take care of love. Is really.
So how would you respond? Because I've seen some, especially couples right now, are having some challenges, and this is coming up in a variety of ways. Of well, first there's a horrific trend of domestic violence increasing as anger increases, as economic issues increase. Like, all of it's going to be a really negative reactive cycle. But then just the everyday couples, in which maybe one person is inclined for this response, and they're able to hold that space or that container or hovering in that, and the other can't do it.
Yeah.
So how would you speak to that around advice? Because I think that the person or the partner who's able to hold the space is maybe expecting that in return.
Yes.
And the other person who isn't able to acknowledge the difference of the emotions, feelings, and actions, or how we separate it out. So how would you speak to that?
Well, there's two primary ways I would speak to that. The first one is trying to help an understanding that there are vulnerable emotions and there are resistant emotions. And I separate those out, in my writing, where you have feelings like fear and sadness and helplessness, and then you have anger and punishment and rage. And so when someone's in the resistant emotions or in the anger, you're asking questions of what vulnerable feelings are you feeling underneath that are hard to tolerate, which is what leaves you feeling where you are. And if you can access those vulnerable feelings underneath, I would be so grateful. I'd be so grateful. And so,
but that very question might come across as a judgment or criticism.
Yeah. If it's said in a very soft way, it's much more likely that it won't. Mm-hmm. If you show a list where a person can actually have a chance, again, have lists of both vulnerable and resistant emotions too. And the 75 are broken down to half vulnerable, half resistant, approximately. And if they really are just mad that you're lecturing to me, screw you, this is what I feel, I don't have any other feelings underneath it, what are you talking about? Then your need is going to be to take some independence as much as you can. Mm-hmm. So you with a tone that's as kind as possible, recognizing this person's not very likely to be being angry on purpose. They don't really understand that there is vulnerability underneath the resistant emotions.
Yeah.
And if you express it in a tone that's as kind as you can, then the next step is as kind as you can. This is scary to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go in the other room. And if you could be a little softer, I have a need to have you be a little bit softer or a little bit more vulnerable. And maybe I'm asking too much, and I'm sorry if this comes across as a judgment. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry if this comes off as rejecting you, but it scares me, so I'm going to have to take care of myself. So I'm going to go walk in the other room, and I'll be back. I'm not walking in the other room and leaving. I'm just taking some independence. So it's a combination of trying to support the vulnerable feelings to be shared, and I perhaps miss a step, which is I'm really appreciative that you're aware that you're angry.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative that you know that you're raging or that you're on the verge of violence. And do you feel like you might act on it? Mm-hmm. You stay with where they are longer than I just did. And you try your hardest to care for the very experience they're in. And then if that doesn't work, then you go to
having some space,
the vulnerable feelings attempt, and then as a last resort, with a tone of voice, trying to convey your need to take space.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful and easier said than done for many people when they don't have that language and vulnerability with one another. And I would add on to that to even also say we sometimes look to our partners to rescue us out of where we're at. And this might be a great opportunity to strengthen those skills for that independence in your own healing. Because there's likely some deeper stories there, right? Underneath what we are, there's always, I mean, not to get too psychoanalytic with it, but it comes from somewhere, right? It could even be transgenerational that isn't within your conscious awareness of experience, but something you've just been passed on with, or, I know I've got plenty of that from my transgenerational traumas. It's not even direct. It's just there.
Yeah. And that's a very important concept to understand, that transgenerational, the way I frame it, is chemical, neurological, DNA, genetic, and people think feelings are independent from chemistry and neurology. They're not.
Yeah.
And so if you have a partner that is feeling angry, being able to feel some caring or compassion for, I'll bet you can see one of their parents very likely
right.
Had that pattern. And if their chemistry is off, the neurology is off, and there's a crisis on top of it, it's pretty hard to expect that they're going to have a lobotomy and suddenly be able to change
right.
it and be vulnerable.
Yeah. So that's a great opportunity to have that recognition and say, I'm wishing my partner could soothe me in this way, and they're not in a space to be able to do so, and that disappoints me. And how can I soothe myself right now?
Exactly.
I just finished reading Dan Siegel's new book, The Power of Showing Up, which is a beautiful book on how parents can be more present to create safety and security in their kids. And the first 75 pages of it was all about attachment, and not just attachment theory from early childhood, but how our attachment styles show up as parents and how we act on our early childhood attachments now that we're adults. But one of the things that was talked about, how we can rewire those attachments towards being a more secure attachment by either learning it or earning it. And the earning it was part of, he said, we can give it to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And this is a great opportunity. I think where couples are struggling through all of this is that recognition of, I'm really wanting someone to come rescue me, or fill in the blank, whatever that looks like in your dynamic. And what a silver lining to be able to say, I can offer myself my own healing, or my own reassurance, or my own softness that I were to wish that idealized parent or partner could show up as.
Yeah. I mean, one of the pieces you're offering is literally an educational piece, which is, we often think, well, are you telling me I'm not my feelings? That makes me feel like I'm schizophrenic. You mean I have another part of me? I have another part of me that can care? What are you talking about? And so it's very important to support that, yes, we have our feelings. We also have a possibility of responding to our feelings. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that responder is more you, or can be more you, which is part of what you're talking about by earning.
Yeah.
If you can respond to how you or your partner or your child or your father or your mother is feeling, you've really reversed some of the attachment that you were talking about.
Yeah. And again, I think we're going to be presented for quite some time, because even once, the dust has settled and the shelter in place is lifted, and however long, 6-8 weeks from now, there's going to be a really interesting readjustment to our old life, which is really a new life, because it's going to be a new normal, because life will never be the same. And so we get to practice these responses right now so we can get some greater skills, because we're going to continue to be challenged with them. This is not going to be a one and done either. Yeah,
for sure. One of the things that I wanted to mention is, this is an incredible opportunity for good parents. And there are so many good parents in this generation that made the same mistakes that I made, which was caring a little bit too much for my kids, entertaining them a little bit too much, not quite assuming that, we're all in a world, like you were saying earlier, of suffering, et cetera, so we all need to be resourceful ourselves. And we can say, and at different age groups, we say it a different way. But say, starting at about 5 or 6, we can say, this is a challenging time for everybody in the world. Mm-hmm. So everybody's being asked to find a way to take a little bit more helpful responsibility in whatever environment we're in. Now, I didn't have to do that when I was your age.
Yeah.
But you're in this age where right now there's a disease where you could kill grandpa, grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want you to feel bad about that, but I want you to notice that. So you as a younger person, that's such an intimate conversation.
Yeah.
It can balance what's happening with parents that are really good parents that have this tendency. Yeah. So I see that happening all over the place with friends and friends' kids and their grandkids, and them starting to give these messages to 6-year-olds, and in some cases 20-year-old kids.
Oh yeah.
Or 25-year-old kids. Same thing. You know what? You've always felt like it was kind of the world centered around you, and probably I was part of the mistake of that.
Yep.
But now we're all going to need to step up because the whole world's in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I actually feel a lot of hope. I think I told you I'm an optimist by nature, but to me, I really feel a lot of hope for the humanity that's going to come out of this. How can it not?
Yes.
Never before have we as a whole human being movement across the whole planet been joined together in a common cause. And how can that not create hope? So that's my silver lining that I hope gets created, because I think the ripple effect of that can take us to beautiful places we have yet to even know are possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to join you at one level and go maybe even a slightly farther, and another way a little bit shorter, but maybe we'll even out in the same place. How can we not do that? Because we've had opportunities where we've had a sort of a group high and then we forget it. So
yeah.
But there's no doubt in my mind that you're right, that there's going to be a significant minority of people, at least, that are going to be animalistically caring for the world.
Yeah.
The place where I'm going to go maybe one step farther is, now that we're dealing with our personal mortality, and kids and young adults have the possibility of saying, God, I didn't really have a sense that death was so real. And our planet is dying too. And once we take care of our personal mortality, maybe I can use this as a catalyst to be more aware of the global mortality that's there with global warming. Yeah. And maybe it makes sense to cooperate. Maybe it makes sense to find a way to have the world move towards some kind of a oneness. And
yes.
That seems like a wonderful aspiration.
I agree. And it's been so lovely talking with you. And I really feel that so many people are going to benefit from what we've shared today. And how is the best way people can find you? I know we'll have it in the show notes as well, but for someone listening, what's the best way to access you and your work and your writings and what you do?
Well, thank you for giving me that chance. AwarenessThatHeals.org is the first part is the name of the book that I came out with this year, and that has the 75 and the 75. And that website, as well as the globalbridge.org, which is the foundation, and then humanisticspirituality.org is 250 free videos on what we've been talking about. And that right now is the best way to be in touch.
Beautiful.
I really would love to be in touch with anybody, and especially if anybody really sees this and they have a link into homelessness. Right now, I'm actively attempting to do a lot with
You've got a lot of beautiful passions you're working towards. Yeah. So thank you, Robert, for sharing your wisdom and your time today. And we'll have all those links in the show notes so any of you guys can access them as well. And I know I deeply enjoyed our connection and look forward to that continuing, because like with all of this, it doesn't have to stop here, right? This is where we get to continue connecting and growing and together. So thank you so much, and stay healthy.
Yes, well, thank you so much for your wisdom and your just graciousness and your flow, and just being such a sincere spirit. I really
thank you very much. I appreciate that. Be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.